Welcome to the Voiceless Thoughts podcast, where we give voice to your thoughts, feelings, and situations in life. This show is all about making you feel like you aren't facing life alone. As a note, myself and other anchors are normal men who are not certified, trained, or in any way credited as being mental health professionals. Enjoy the show. On another note, if you have any questions or thoughts you'd like to hear us discuss, feel free to email us at voicelessthoughtspodcast@gmail.com. It is spelled the same as the title of the show. All right. Episode number 2. We're getting into the nitty gritty.
Yeah. So our first one was just an overview of everything that we want to go through, but now we're getting into a certain topic, and this topic is not necessarily the broad scope of depression, but what it is, what it's like, and then like common stereotypes is something we're going to focus on in this one. So, and disclaimer, this may be our idea of depression, but not everybody's. There's all kinds of different ways to look at this. And there's nothing wrong with your way of thinking of depression and anxiety and different things like that. But those experiences that we go through that we think of depression that define who we are. So you have to figure out that everybody's different and every situation is different.
Yeah, that's a really good point to make. And I think in planning this episode, obviously, we really wanted to make a point of kind of clarifying again. You know, we have a unique experience and outlook on life between the two of us to some degree, and we won't see it from every point of view. And there's certainly something to be said for everybody's perspective. Everything's going to be different, but again, we just want to base this show on what we're thinking, what we're feeling, and hopefully help some people along the way, or if nothing else, just get you thinking. So with that, Brandon, before we jump too deep, how was your week, man? How you feeling?
It's a different week with not doing everything. I was kind of, I don't know, I slept a lot because I just felt like time to catch up somehow, and I don't know, it hasn't been as bad as I said in the first, but there is that idea of trying to fill the empty space that we were talking about, and just kind of being in your own thoughts alone for like an entire day can be draining at times.
That's a really good way to put it. And I know that was a big, challenge point for you going into the transition out of college. So it's good to hear you're taking it in stride so far. Sleeping a lot. Sleeping is a good way to avoid thinking because you're sleeping.
Yeah, you don't need to worry about anything. You're just knocked out, and
that's right. On a beach somewhere, or
yeah,
in the mountains if you're Wim Hof.
Hopefully you don't dream like crazy, but
gosh, I mean, that's for the people that do have like chronic night terrors.
Oh yeah.
Gosh, it sounds terrible.
And luckily I don't have insomnia, but I know someone that does, and that is not fun. Our idea of sleep are completely different.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, aside from the horrifying images of seeing Brandon at work every day, nothing really keeps me up at night. I'm sorry, I had to go there.
Oh yeah, it's all right.
No, we joke.
At least I don't work with you as much, because then I would just be all the time. But anyways,
I was gonna say you shouldn't be sleeping as much because you're not as drained because you're not around me.
Yeah,
at home.
The energy, the fake smile, and everything.
Oh my gosh. Fake energy. That's
yeah.
That's
fake
cool.
Energy is tough. That is a huge part of depression. Is after a while there's the common sayings of I'm just tired, I'm fine, different things like that where you are not fine per se, but you don't feel like burdening people, and then you just bottle it up, and it just ends up getting worse.
That's what you said, birdering, which sounds like a combination of murdering and burdening, which I think kind of fits with the feeling of you can't tell anybody anything, or like, the fake energy preventing you from having to open up to someone.
No, I just can't say the word, but it's.
I kind of like it though. Can we coin the term?
I think it works. I meant that. That's what I was trying to do. Making up new words on this podcast.
See, everything we do, happy mistakes, just like Bob Ross.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
We should get him on the show.
We should just do some painting. That'd be.
Oh, okay. I love that you said painting because that brings up my giant analogy I thought of today while walking my dog under the nice morning sky. Are you ready for this?
Yeah, let's hear it.
So I was thinking of the human mind and mental energy as a whole as a painting on a canvas. The canvas being kind of like our first episode. It's the underlying, it's your history, your maybe or maybe not your physical build, your physical health, your outside environmental sources of stimuli. It's kind of like it's the state in which your mind has to be physically. And then the paint, the different colors represent the different, things that that can be going on in your mind, whether it's sexuality or it's some sort of mental issue or like disorder or something like a category of things you like. And then the different types of brush strokes are the intensity and or the perception with which you connect with those. So like, for instance, maybe like you have your blank canvas because everybody, regardless of kind of where you come from, you can really be stricken by any sort of, collection of things in your brain to form your brain. It doesn't necessarily depend on, if you're tall or short, or if you're gay or straight, or if you're from a certain part of the world or not. People from anywhere could be depressed. People from anywhere can like to play with Legos. I love to play Legos, by the way. Show trivia for 200. And and then the different colors obviously differentiate the different elements to that. So it all comes in together. The painting is essentially your consciousness / like your brain makeup.
Yeah. That kind of brings in the idea of coming in with a clean slate. So it's almost like coming in with a clean canvas. Try to look at this experience that you're going into that may be difficult for you, and not bringing other prior like experiences necessarily into it, and try to enjoy it as you can in a way. Because I've heard the come in with a clean slate a lot, and it's mostly for forgiveness or doing something that you're afraid to do. So like if something happened with you with this certain fear, try to forget about it, and not necessarily just forget about it, but like try to overcome it and try to not bring that fear up when you're trying to conquer it.
Yeah, that's a good point. Taking a step back to depression, before we get into defining it, to kind of wrap this up. Yeah, going with a clean slate, I think is Yeah, because I mean, you can look at it from either the perspective I was sharing or like what you were saying, where like you're not bound to your former experiences and you're not bound to a certain destiny. Like it's all about like how you mentally check into the situation and how you like choose to go through it. You have so much more control than you think. I think that that's a pretty good truism to point out. And there's lots of research on that too. I mean, even just the silly like workplace work-life balance posters, like I mean they're bullshit in a lot of ways, to anyone who like feels like they've worked at their company for a while. But at the same time, there is some truth to having a positive attitude about things. Obviously work's a good example just because it's harder to do that there than other places. But yeah, it's that's a really good point to make, going into this conversation too, because it's good to keep in the back of your head, clean slate. Not everything's gonna be a certain way. Not everything has to be. So
Yeah, and the positive energy that kind of the clean slate brings, in a way, because this all connects with depression. So you want to be able to come in with a clean slate and not have your prior experiences truly affect you in a bad way. And then you also want to come in with a positive attitude with anything you want to do. It's harder said than done. I know that. Especially if it's something you failed at before. But something that I always hear is failure is the best teacher. And it's difficult to wrap your head around that because failing's not fun. Success, that's what you want to achieve, but coming in with a positive attitude can kind of change your ways in a way.
totally. Yeah, failures. Yeah, ooh, that's a whole nother topic. But yeah, I totally agree there. It's a great teacher, and yeah, don't be afraid to fail. Buzz notes or Cliff Notes version of that. Um, so let's get into it here. We kind of looked up some brief factual stuff just to kind of sprinkle in here and make ourselves seem more official, but also to kind of give a good base to what we kind of want to do for this episode, which is, again, just to kind of talk about the word depression. So we looked it up. Per the DSM-5, depression, which is otherwise known as a major depressive disorder or clinical depression, is a common and serious mood disorder. So informative, right, Sminks?
Yeah, but what does that mean? Like,
Right?
is depression? It's basically using depression as a definition of depression. So it's kind of confusing, like depressive disorder. But what is that? What does that mean in like a non-scientific form? So in like clinical depression. So then what's clinical depression? It's kind of, it's almost like even the scientists are not figuring out what depression means, because it's just,
And they're supposed to know.
yeah, and it's just so broad, and there's so many different ways that it can affect you that no one really can fully pinpoint what depression is, because it's so different for everybody. There's different side effects to it. There's different ways to think about it. So it's not like a cut and dry type of definition.
Totally. And that's what we've already been saying from the beginning of the show, and we'll keep saying, but everybody's so different, and I understand the DSM-5, I think, is trying, to kind of like help explain it, but I think without a list of symptoms, that definition seems pretty vague. I mean, if you like, yeah, I just don't, it's hard to come out of that with a good understanding. But
yeah, and then we also they did outline a couple of, like, not necessarily symptoms, but things that people could go through because it's not everybody that goes through every single one or one or the other. So they're just common between people. So the first one is depressed mood most of the day, nearly every day. Um,
And just to stop you there real fast too,
yeah,
Spinks. They also like go into this idea that to like truly meet the definition of like a diagnosis of depression, you have to meet 5 or more of these symptoms during the same 2-week period. And either one of them, or either one of the 5 have to be either one of the 2 specific ones in the list that we'll talk about in a minute. But it's just again to outline, it's a complex thing that they've derived to diagnose it, which already kind of keys in us to understand it's a lot harder to nail down.
yeah, and the thing with the first one, uh, it just shows how vague this really is. Depressed mood most of the day, nearly every day. Um, because I know me personally, I have spurts to where I'm not necessarily happy or depressed. I'm more of just in my zone, and nothing really is like happening. But uh, and what does that mean with depressed mood? Because the common understanding is people, or non understanding is sadness versus depression. So it kind of, how can you fully figure out if it's just sad because of an event that happened, or you truly are depressed, which both can be the same thing. So it's kind of hard to articulate when you're trying to talk to a professional to get diagnosed.
That is a really good point. And, that kind of can piggyback off the second one here. Markedly diminished interest or pleasure in all or almost all activities most of the day, nearly every day. I mean, there's another stereotype that we wanted to touch on. Depression is constant and inescapable. Meaning, like, if you're not feeling that way all the time or most of the time, then you're kind of invalid in saying you're depressed. And again, this point is just like, to me, this sounds as much like feeling down as it does clinical depression. I mean, you could just very easily have had something knock you off your balance mentally in the beginning of the day, and then you're kind of just distracted, and so you have markedly less interest in things or pleasure because something's bothering you. But
Yeah,
then,
and oh, sorry, I was also going to
no,
say
you're
like
good.
with activities, there could be some activities that can help you get out of your depression. So it kind of um, has both sides of it, because there could be something that you do during a day that maybe one day you don't, so you feel down, but then the next day you're able to, let's just say you're able to go out with your friends or talk to someone like your friends, and that puts you in a better mood because you're just laughing the whole time or something. So
Serotonin,
it kind of is both. It's kind of helps you, but if it doesn't go that way, then it can put your mood down, like you said. Not necessarily fully clinical depression, but put your mood down. So it's kind of hard, again, to articulate.
Right.
And then another one that I feel doesn't always happen. It's just one that can be connected with a lot of people. Is significant weight loss when not dieting, or weight gain, or decrease or increase in appetite nearly every day. Because not necessarily food could be the problem with someone, but also food could be the reason. Like weight loss or weight gain could be the reason why they are in the depressive state. So it can almost be because of it and during. So it's kind of a hard way to understand it.
Right. And as a quick note too, we're not trying to like our goal here isn't to pick apart the definition and say it's bad at all. And I think we kind of said that before, but we're just trying to kind of set the tone for us to talk about it, like what it means to us, and hopefully maybe give some different perspectives on it aside from clinical definitions to maybe kind of paint the picture better for our listeners here. But Yeah, I mean, right. I mean, that could be the cause and that could be the symptom, it's the same thing with a lot of these. The fourth one is a slowing down of thought and a reduction of physical movement that is observable by others, but not merely subjective feelings of restlessness or being slowed down. First of all, that's hard to kind of conceptualize, especially because it sounds like it has to come from an outside source that's observing you. Um, and again, I mean, that could be lack of energy. Maybe your diet's changed. Maybe you're not getting enough vitamin D. I mean, or it could be depression. I mean, there's so many different things there.
Yeah, and I don't want to like we said, put it fully against this, but we want to show how broad and how big depression can be, and it's not just these 8 definitions or 8 symptoms of depression, because they can be totally different things. Like example for this one, I have a restless brain, so my brain is going really fast, and sometimes you can notice that with people on how they talk if they're talking really fast. So it can be both ways. It can be slowing down, but it also could be your speed and you're going too fast for your brain to even catch up sometimes.
Right? Yeah, and that's a perspective that I wouldn't necessarily have thought about from my standpoint. But yeah, I mean, there you go. It's it's just so vast. Yeah, I can't say it enough. So number 6 is feelings of worthlessness or excessive or inappropriate guilt nearly every day. Um,
Well, before we get into that one, the fifth one is fatigue or loss of energy, because we kind of touched on it a little bit, but that could be multiple things, like Jake said. With it could be because of your not getting vitamin D, your iron is low, um, your diet has changed, different things like that. So
Sleep.
I was just gonna touch on that one a little bit.
Yeah, no, sorry, and I skipped that one over, so thanks, Brandon. I kind of, yeah, half threw it in there. Yeah, and I mean, okay, also for the record, we always hear it. Every American is always tired and always drinking coffee. I mean, it's so many different things are tied into
Not to
fatigue and
call you out, but you're drinking
energy.
coffee right now.
I am a coffee junkie, that is for sure. But it's funny. I've grown up now to the point where like I used to think like I needed it, but like it's more of if I eat like a half decent diet and I get half decent sleep, like 5 or 6 hours or more, like I'm usually not that bad off. It's really there's times where I just need to drink more water and like push through it. But
Yeah, because that's another thing. Water is an important energy. So
hydrate, everybody.
yeah, hydrate. Drink some water.
Maybe we should make an episode about water. That would be
Yeah,
that would be a really good one.
And then we do it in the ocean, and we just hear the
That's right.
waves in the background. Perfect. Yeah.
That should be
Wait,
before or
let's
after
just-
the drunk cast.
Yeah. True. And then let's wait on that because it is probably a little cold. It's not fully there. We'll have to go all the way to like Florida or something.
Oh yeah,
Somewhere
Lake
warm.
Michigan's always freezing.
Yeah.
Just do it in a lake. So Smigs and I both, gosh, Brandon and I both probably deal with this, but diminished ability to think or concentrate or indecisiveness nearly every day. If you've ever had anxiety, or if you've ever, or are depressed, experience depression, experience ADD, ADHD, a lot of times that can tie into there. Or you're just an indecisive person by nature. Could be lots of things there too.
And that also could connect to with 6 of like guilt. You feel like your indecisiveness becomes something where you don't want to make a drastic decision because you don't want something to go wrong per se.
Right.
And then like feeling it comes. I think all of these are connected, but these are pretty good. 2 that have similarities that work with one another, like diminished ability to concentrate. So if you're not focusing and you're not getting stuff done, that feeling of worthlessness might come into play because you are not getting the stuff done that you want.
That's a great point.
So, like, with that, it just kind of shows how much one thing can affect the next. It's almost a snowball effect. One thing happens, and then other problems come about that are connected with that, and then it just keeps coming and coming, and then you're in this state where, like, you dug yourself a hole. The analogy of you dug yourself a hole, and now how do you get out?
Exactly. I mean, the snowball concept fits so well here. You know, all these can get so easily spun up into a self-fulfilling prophecy. You know, that's why there's been so many, like, quote-unquote self-help books about starting your morning off right. You know, by that meaning, drink a bunch of water, or make your bed, or go find a rare bird that you've been looking for your whole life. Like, you know, getting something done immediately so you start the snowball off well. And I'm sure there'll be, like, down the road we can, like, get into all kinds of, like, tips for, like, starting the day right and defeating the snowball. But that's so important. It all can connect so easily, especially when you're kind of on that more fragile state of your mental being, and you're, you know, conscious of it, and you're conscious of things that you're doing that aren't fulfilling to you or are negatively fulfilling to you. So, great point. But, and then, go ahead.
I was just going to say, then this last one. This one is where we want you to... This one, I think, is the most extreme version of depression. And that is recurrent thoughts of deaths, or like having a plan for that. And it's basically connected with you're feeling worthless, or you're feeling like you can't do anything right. This is where you want to do the call. You want to find a therapist. You need to get out and help yourself, because I know the word we've been kind of going away from, but it's an important thing to talk about. And I don't think, but that is the answer, and I don't think you think it's the answer, but you want to be happy, and you don't know what to do anymore. So I don't know. This word is suicide, and I know people that have been affected by it, and I think you need to get help before it gets to that point.
Yeah, and it's so hard to talk about too. And again, you know, you can come to that point for so many reasons, but there's not a whole lot of, you know, it wouldn't be so serious if there were easy ways to get away from that point. You know, easy to get there. It's not so easy to get away from it. So, you know, and, you know, at the bottom of our show notes, we've included 2 really good sites to find both virtual and in-person therapist visits. It is super easy. I personally found my most recent one from Psychology Today. It was great. Like, I got to search by, like, keywords, and I got to type in, like, what I was struggling with. And you could just contact them via their local email. It sources everything from whether they do in-person or virtual to their history, their credentials. It even has a little blurb of, like, what they'd like to say to you as a potential client. So I really would encourage anyone to check that out. And obviously, so that's Psychology Today. We also have Good Therapy posted there. Again, really good for finding e-visit options. And then again, guys, that hotline we have in there too. It's 1-800-273-8255 if anyone forgot. It's anonymous. It's there for people who would like to take that step. But with that,
I do want to see, I want to go into what we think like what we think of symptoms when we think of depression. So I'll start with one and then you can grab one. Um, so I think like a lot of these touch on them because they're trying to make it more broad so it fits a lot of different categories, but it might come across as too broad endpoints to where you don't think your situation is part of it, which is not true. So like I have I overthink a lot and I think too much. So that comes to like it's kind of thinking of like all the bad things and trying to like think of the good things that happen in your life, but those bad things keep coming up and you keep on trying to switch and then it keeps coming back. So then it's kind of like this cycle of you trying to figure out your like your happiness and you are trying to not think about these like they could be simple things but they just keep adding up like different mistakes that you've said that you've done I mean and then stuff that you said that you regret like we talked about the regret in the first one so I think overthinking and can be hurtful at times but it can also be good if you use it in the right way.
Yeah, totally. And I think kind of piggyback there with you, I kind of manifest it similarly, very overactive mind. And it's interesting too, because there's a lot of people that on the flip side don't really know they have depression. So like, we kind of have the spectrum here of like you and I, overthinkers, and other people who, maybe just have that fatigue or loss of energy and diminished ability to concentrate without actual conceptualization of the fact that they're slowly sinking into this like lifestyle of depression, So having both ideas there, it makes sense. Obviously, we became close friends pretty quickly. So it's funny that we kind of share brainwave style, but yeah, it's that's kind of similar for me. It's again the snowball thing was a big component of me kind of like really getting a hard go of it with depression, just as far as letting everything build up, never like taking that first step of, I know I need to do this. I just can't bring myself to do it because I know it's going to put me farther up the chain away from that snowball. And that's again just kind of sitting there being inactive, having that myriad of thoughts keeping you from action just purely based on wrestling with indecision, and that kind of just is born out of successive failures that your mind likes to focus on. And
Yeah, and also the snowball effect doesn't always mean it's going to be a bad thing. Like you said, I was thinking when you said trying to get yourself up to do something that will get you to a better place, but trying to get the energy and the motivation to get to that. That's the hardest hurdle that you have to make. But I think sometimes when you make that hurdle and you go do this one thing that you want to get accomplished, it starts snowballing to other things you get accomplished, and your mood starts getting a little better, and you start going on the up. So it can happen both ways. It doesn't always have snowball effect. Doesn't always mean you're going downhill.
Yep.
You could be going up, and you just got to make that first hurdle. And I'm not saying there's not going to be hurdles throughout the process of you trying to improve yourself and your mood, but that first hurdle is the hardest part because you've been in this slump for, I don't know, let's say a small amount, a week or years. either way, that hurdle's still going to be difficult to overcome. And then, but once you overcome that, you will slowly start feeling a little better. Um, but the hard part with depression is that sometimes you fall back down. Um, and then you just have to keep on getting over that hurdle, and that hurdle becomes easier and easier once you have done it before. Because one bad thing could happen, and then boom, your mood is gone. I know that has happened to me where I'm like, wow, I'm doing good right now. This is all good, and then boom, I fail a test, for example, and then it's just like it could be small things, but then it just starts leading to your mood draining, and then you go back to that state, but you have to try to get back to where you were like a couple days ago.
It's like a climb up on a ladder and then a random rung, depending on how important that thing is to you that happens that's negative. It breaks and you're potentially looking at falling down the ladder a few rungs, and it could be pretty devastating if you're not reframing, which is something I know we wanted to talk about too. So with depression, kind of a basal idea that we were throwing back and forth, and we're not trying to get into the whole how to combat depression, how to deal with it, what it's necessarily like on a day-to-day basis, but I know we did want to kind of touch on the negative side of reframing depression, as far as people who maybe not have like as deep of an appreciation for the somewhat science, I don't know how to refer to it, the like we don't understand mental health as well as we could. I guess that's because, again, I mean, we said it in the last episode, the brain is still kind of a big mystery to us, and so a lot of people, I think, look down on depression. Well, I mean, they definitely do. A lot of people do. Mislabeling it. We talked about some stereotypes earlier. Sadness versus depression. Stop being sad. And the people have it worse, negative reframing of, kind of noticing or coming to a realization that somebody around you is depressed, and, maybe you do know this person, maybe you don't, but, the approach is essentially, why are you depressed? You have all these things around you, confronting that person with what you see as their life or whatever.
Yeah, like different things like money is happiness, or different things like, oh, you have all these toys. Why are you so...
Right.
Why are you
or
so
you have
depressed?
a job.
Why are you so sad? You got
Right.
all of this. I don't have this. And it's kind of a we versus them, which I don't think depression should be that way. It should be us versus the issue. And the issue of depression is to help others. Like you don't. I always say you don't know what you like. If I have a saying where a high can change someone's day, which means you don't know what they're going through, and if you say hello to someone, if you say good morning or good night to someone, you don't know what that'll make them feel. And I always go by a hello can change someone's life or change someone's day at least, because you don't know if they're just being ignored all day, and then that one high, that one polite thing from a stranger can change their day around a little bit.
And that's it. That captures it. We want to be us versus depression, and not just letting it be something trivial or just sadness or somebody who just doesn't appreciate things in life.
Or who has it worse.
Mm-hmm.
Like us, that comes with a lot of different issues where we fight us versus them, which I think it needs to be we versus, or us versus the problem, and this is one of those big ones.
Yeah.
Because depression, for how much it is known about it, there is probably the same amount of unknown.
There you go. That's what I was trying to say earlier.
Yeah, it's just kind of, there's so much to it that you can't really fully explain it to someone. And it's not just sadness. It's not just things that can make it sound not as impactful, because depression is a tough thing. And like we said in the first one, life is tough. It's not an easy thing. And you going through life is a milestone in itself. So
right.
I don't know. It's kind of hard to really explain to you what depression is. We can explain it through what we have experienced, but that's not everything. We're two males that have been in college for 4 years that are just getting out of college. We haven't experienced everything in life, and we never will. There's so much to it that you can't really fully understand. But the thing is, you're not going to understand everything, but you want to put in the effort to understand other people, and that way we could help as much as we can, if not everybody.
Exactly. And by the way, don't sell me short, Smigs. I spent 5 years in college, man. That extra year.
True. I spent 6, so I didn't want to sound like it was bad. Yeah, I spent 6. You spent 5. Okay.
Oh, I got you.
But we've been in school for our whole life,
right?
So it's kind of a narrowed view on life.
But I think it's good we own it, and I just hope someday too we can get, a lot of good perspectives and somehow like bring it all to the people who may or may not end up listening to the show. At least for us, we can learn about it, and hopefully other people can too.
Yeah. So, another thing that we think of as a stereotype, and it will be our next podcast, is successful people can't be depressed. So this is our whole concept of like money. If you have money, you can't be depressed. If you are a famous athlete, you got all this, you can't be depressed. If you're on TV shows, you're all this. But this quote is, I don't think humankind is meant to be under the limelight all the time. And that is why there is a lot of depression in these famous people, because we're not supposed to every mistake get called out for it, or like some people get death threats for different things, and it's like it's something that Jake and we could mess up on, but it wouldn't be as big of a deal because maybe only a couple people would know about it, or even just us. But if you make that mistake in front of millions and millions of people, you almost get the new word of getting canceled.
Yeah, and and that's there's a lot to that too, but again, like back to the next show, we also wanted to have a parallel of throw it back to me and Brandon, what if we were to do this? Like what would we think the outcome would be, and just kind of comparing how that level of existing as a human in society is just so much more aggressive in everything, especially depression, and just kind of looking at parallels in popular culture around depression still. We kind of wanted to see if maybe we could bring in a few more stereotypes, and maybe just try and really open up maybe why, if there is any popular culture plays a role in how we see depression, and again, kind of looking at some big names and seeing what happened to them. Why are they depressed? They have everything. They should be happy all the time for no reason other than that they have things. And success. So,
Yep. So that will be our podcast, and I really encourage you to look at that email, voicelessthoughtspodcast@gmail.com, and send us your story, and we will try to fit some stories in. We're not gonna put any names, not gonna put any details that you like. If there's a detail that you don't want to come out of it, that's fine. We will work around that and not and understand your situation. We just want to know other perspectives in life and other situations that we might not know, and you as viewers might not know, and maybe you have a similar one that you thought was just you, and it can maybe help you understand that you're not alone in this.
Yeah, and it doesn't. I mean, so I think, well, obviously now we're doing the depression series, so like if it's something that's maybe related to anxiety, social confidence, body image, like that sort of stuff, those are all like on the roadmap. It really, if it's any mental health issue, we're planning to cover it. So like it may just be later down the line, but we might also try and find a way to just tie it into these episodes. Obviously, we're a new show, so it's not like we're like bombarded with stories, and we are 100% would love to hear different perspectives and talk through them. So, yeah. Well, geez, you got any last closing remarks aside from stop talking, Jake?
No, I think we still got that suicide helpline in our description, and it's also 1-800-273-8255. We've said it multiple times, but we really mean it. If you are at a point where you're making a drastic decision in life, call this number. Or we have Psychology Today or Good Therapy. And we'll also have those links in the description. And we really encourage you to try to find a therapist that could help you, or find someone that is willing to listen to you, because it doesn't have to necessarily be a professional. We just know that a professional setting might be easier for you, because I think sometimes it's harder to talk to someone that you like, a loved one or someone that you know, because you're afraid of what they're going to think of you. And I understand that. So there's multiple different options. I just want you to try and get out of that slump.
And there we go. That's the call to action for the episode. Yeah. Can't stress it enough, folks. Talking to someone almost always helps. Almost always. It doesn't help everybody, but most people.
Yeah.
Journaling too. That we can get into that later, but
yeah. Well, see you next time.
Yep. Take care, guys.